Welcome everyone. I know this looks like a crochet hot mess, and it is, but if you're new to crocheting and you've never picked up a crochet needle before, you're going to want to understand the tools of what you'll need to use when navigating the internet and looking at projects. There are so many crafty people out there that have tutorials, but a lot of times you don't understand the tools that they're using, where to get them, or what size needles you need. Now, needles typically have a number and a letter, and also they range in sizes from 3.5 to 10.5. A typical crochet needle that you use for a standard project is probably going to be between 5 to 6.5. So if you can only get one needle, I would suggest that you get a crochet needle that's a 6, because that's what you'll use for most yarns. 5.5 or 6 is good. Also, if you're not sure of what yarn to use for your project, I love this Red Heart yarn. Number one, it's typically easy to work with, and on the instructions, it will tell you right here what size needle you need. So this one is saying that you need a 5.5, which is great. Now, what happens if you only bought a 6 and you don't have a 5.5? Don't freak out. Just use the 6, and vice versa. If you have a, smaller needle than the 5.5 of 5 and it says 5.5, just use the 5. All it means is that your project will either be tighter or looser, a little bit smaller or bigger than what that project needle calls for. Now, if it calls for a 6, you don't want to use a 10, because the yarn probably doesn't support that, gap. But 6 to 6.5 is fine. You're also going to use what's called space or placeholders, and I don't have any kind of regular placeholders that you buy at the store. Those are expensive. They can be $20 and upwards of that, depending on how many you need. But I found this off of my clothing that I bought at the store, and it had a fancy little tag, and I use this. This is my favorite little placeholder because it has a little sharp pointy that I can put into the yarn, and then I can fasten so that it doesn't come loose. And then this is just something I got off a bread bag, and you can use these. These are really cool, and they work as great placeholders. And then this I got in the mail off of a shoe rack. There were 2 of them, and I cut them, and I sometimes use this as a placeholder. So you don't have to go out and spend money on fancy placeholders. The other thing is the yarns. As you can see, this is a thick one, and then this is a very thin one that would work with a small needle. And Goodwill or local yard sales, just grab a bag of that, because it's expensive. And if you start your project, if you're brand new, you're going to mess up. It's just the way it is. And if you mess up, then you can just throw it away and start again, and you won't get so frustrated that you've spent, $50 to $100 on very expensive yarn. If you plan to make any kind of animals or stuffed pillows, you're also going to need this polyfill. Now, if you have an old pillow in the closet, grab the old pillow, open it up. I bet it's got some of this polyfill. Just make sure that the dog hasn't peed on it or thrown up on it. That's not good. So you can use that, or you can use, scraps of yarn if you've done a lot of projects, and rather than throw them away, just ball them up and put them in a corner for a rainy day for another project. The other thing you're going to want is a plastic crochet needle. Now, they come in metal too, and I don't like the metal because I've poked myself many times. So I love the plastic ones, and they're easy to thread, and for most projects they'll work, unless you have some fine detail, but I really go with these. 99 cents a piece, so very inexpensive, very cheap. So that's my tutorial for beginners, and I hope you check me out on Etsy. It's Lori's Handiwork, and appreciate you following my beginner's guide.